step by step of how to draw the pansy, and then I'm going to show you a simple watercolor technique to add the color afterwards. So since I'm going to be using watercolor tonight, this is the paper that I like to use, the Canson brand. It's a 140-pound watercolor paper. It's still considered a student grade, which means it's reasonably priced, which works out great because if you start drawing and you want to do a lot of watercolor painting, or you can even put acrylics on there, that works well too. You don't have to feel like your paper is so precious that you can't practice and make something without having to feel like you need to make a masterpiece. So Canson watercolor has worked wonderful for me for the last several years, and I highly recommend that paper. I'm just going to be using a regular old mechanical pencil tonight. I have a couple different erasers that I like to use. I like to use a polymer eraser if I need to get rid of some darker lines. I like to use that. And then I have a little kneaded eraser off to the side to be able to pick up any of the graphite from my pencils that work great for that type of a step. I will be using a watercolor brush tonight. The Velvet Touch Princeton series is a nice go-to brush for me. I usually use a size 6 up to a 10. Those are the sizes that I use often. This little watercolor brush is very reasonably priced. It's going to last you a long time. It's got a great little point on it and a nice flexibility. So a great brush, and I believe I bought mine at Michael's. So they're easy to find, and of course you can always find them online. Well, and before I forget, I do have a Ko-fi page, which is rather like a Patreon page. It's a simple place where I have a sketchbook membership. So those who don't necessarily care to draw, but you still want to paint, I do provide all of my tracers underneath there for just a very reasonable membership. Plus, it's just a great place to support my page if you would like to support my page. Well, let's do this big. Let's switch this around. Let's get the picture big. Hopefully tonight, fingers crossed, my internet is going to play nice tonight and we're going to have good reception. Well, let's take a look. And you know what? I'm probably going to use my black and white version here for you to look at. Let's take a little look at the construction of what a pansy flower looks like. So if you take a look, there is going to be, and I'm going to call this the shamrock shape right here. If I continue to draw this one out to the side here, we have 3 of those petals in the front that create kind of a strong emphasis for the front part of that pansy flower. And then on the back, there's going to be 2 additional little petals that are underneath. And often those underneath petals are going to be a different color, the ones that are in front. So when I did mine, I just chose 2 shades of purple, kind of one that is more of a blue purple, and then one that is more of a red violet purple. But you could do this easily by putting a bright pop of yellow behind there if you wanted to. There's a yellow poppy as well that's just solid yellow. There are brighter, darker yellows up front, and then perhaps a lighter yellow for the other ones. So just keep that in mind when you're painting your poppies, that you're going to want to switch those, whatever the back ones are, to a different color than what these 3 that are popping out in front. So that's basically how I created all of the larger full poppies, is by creating these groups of 3, and then there's going to be these ones that are tucked behind that bigger grouping. So here was my 3, here's my 2. Now this was a sideways one, so it's going to be a little bit different, but this is just a very loose rendition. So even though I can read that this is a poppy, it's going sideways, but I don't have a ton of detail in there. So let's go ahead and set up how we would like to draw this. I'm working on a 6x6 piece of paper tonight, but you can do any size you want that works well for you. When you're planning out your flowers, what looks kind of nice is if you can vary it out. So I did like a grouping of one here, and then I came across it and added another set of grouping here, but I also needed something that was going to help weight one side. So I added a larger one down here on this side and just a partial one over here. Now for the leaves, these are just going to be gentle, like a heart-shaped leaf. Nothing too structured. They're very washy. They have just a very simple look. So I will be building that in as well. So I'm going to start up here in my corner of my picture of my drawing, and I'm going to pop in my circles where I want them. So I'm going to look up here, and this is where I'm just going to start with a circle shape. This is going to give me an idea of how big I want to make my poppy. And I'm going to do very much a sketchy motion. It just kind of helps warm my hand up. I have holding my pencil a little bit farther back, so I'm not so tight in making perfect little circles. Hold your pencil back a little ways so that you can be able to have a little bit more loose quality to your drawing. Now this circle, I want it to be kind of behind my flowers so they're not exactly like all, so this one is behind it. So if we take a look here, I have a front one and a back one. So I do have two different areas there. Whoops, I kind of moved too fast. My camera didn't like that, I guess. Hopefully it'll catch up with me and I won't cause a big problem with my focus tonight. Yesterday we had, or last time we had a big problem. Let's see if I can't do this. Let's move this in and then move it back out. And let's see if our camera won't refocus. I might have to switch it. We might have to switch. Let's go this way. I want you to be able to see, so I'm going to give my camera just a little bit of babysitting, which really stinks. Okay, let's go back this way. All right, we'll see if that works. I moved my images too fast. I guess it didn't like it. So I have my two there. So let's go ahead and work with the next grouping. So I'm going to have another one up here off to my side. So I'm going to come across. If I think of it, come across this way and then drop around. So I'm going to come up this way, look over here, come across, put my circle in. This is going to be my next big one, like so. And then I'm going to drop down. Now I do have a full view of this one, so I'm going to go ahead and make a full area of it. So we're going to come in like this. All right, so we have a full one there. And then for my partial one, I'm going to do kind of an oblong shape. So I'm going to focus on a shape that's more of an oval is what I'm going to be focusing on. And I'm going to put my oval shape here. Okay, so now I pretty much have it set up of the bigger ones that I'm looking for, and I can kind of work from that area. So let's go ahead and start in with my shapes. So for this one, I'm going to put my clover shape that I have created. I'm going to do my clover shape off to this side up here. These are the ones that are going to be more behind my flower. So I'm going to start that clover shape here. It can have just a tiny bit of a ruffle. If you would like to have a little bit of a ruffle top to your flower, that will look fine. But it does need to be kind of a pie shape. So you're going to have a pie shape to your flower down here at the bottom, and then the little bit of ruffly bits. This one is the one that you see it fully, so I'm going to see all of my sides. This one I'm coming up, having a little bit of ruffle parts, but then it's going to end there. So let's go ahead and build that shape. So here's going to be where my center is. I'm going to start with a round circle. That'll help me know where I'm going to be building my shape. I'm going to start with that center pie shape. So I'm going to come up. Now, when you're drawing yours, you might want to do this very lightly so that you can erase it easily. And but I have to do it a little heavy-handed so you can actually see what I'm doing. But hello, ladies. Hi, Carrie. Hi, Gloria. Thanks for coming on tonight. So let's start with our pie shape here. So I'm going to come up, give it a little bit of a wiggle bit, top, come down. So there's my first pie shape. Now this one is going to come off to the side. So I'm going to create that clover leaf look. I'm going to come out, but this is still a pie shape. I'm going to come up and then it's going to butt in. I'm going to go a little, I'll bring this in close so you can kind of see. What makes a nice division is if you can make that little slight little dip right there, it's going to give your eye a little bit of a trick that there's more than just one leaf there. There's two, but it's not a big indication. Okay, so let's come back down here. Now we're going to come out this way and make our next pie shape up a little wiggle bit. So there is going to be, and I'll erase this so you can see what I've drawn a little bit easier. So I've drawn that little clover leaf shape. So these are the big ones that are out in the front. And I kind of explained that with this one here, how this is that clover leaf. This has definitely a clover leaf look to it. So these three clover leaves, or that darker purple ones that I'm going to be making, are all going to be clumped together. And then these two in the back will be a different shade of purple, yellow. They could be white, white with just a little bit of purple in it. So there's lots of ways to create these. So here's my little pie shape. Now I need to make those little ruffly bits that were behind. So I'm going to create another little bit of a flower back here. So these are the petals that are actually behind that clover leaf set. I did get kind of really a little bit too static with my line. I would like to loosen that up a little bit so it's not so exact. So just to loosen up my line work just a little bit, it was getting a little too too hard. Ew, I want it more of a loose look. So I'm going to loosen up that line work a little bit. Okay, so there's that one. Now let's work on our next one. Now to do our next one, we're going to change the direction. So this one was facing more this direction. So now I'm going to drop my little circle a little lower so I can create this shamrock shape here. This is going to be my shamrock shape right there. And then these will be the bottom ones that are hooking on. So let's lower our circle. It's going to come more towards this bottom part of the bigger circle I drew. Okay, and I'm going to erase this a little bit so I'm not seeing it so much. Okay, so let's go ahead and start the shamrock shape. So this is going to be that pie piece that's in the middle. So it's going to come up like that. Now we're going to come out and up and around and then this way too. Okay, so there's my little kind of like shamrock shape. Now I need to come down and make those back petals behind it, those two that are connected, and that will be some sort of different color than my shamrock ones. Hopefully that's making sense. All right, let's pop down a little ways. So let's make a little bud here. So a bud is pretty easy. All I did, and it may not be exactly how a violet looks, but I'm going to do this little bit of a U-shaped cap. And I just made an informal line work here just to divide it up. When I painted it, I was able to divide some lighter and darker colors on there. So I left a little open area. It does have a little cap on the end, those little leaves that are at the bottom when you turn your petal over. It does have a little, we would see a little bit of that cap shape there. So I'm going to come in and I'm going to follow my circle here a little ways. I'm going to come down and into my circle. I'm going to make a bud. So I'm going to start with that U shape. And I want to do a loose line if I can so it's not so exact. Come in and I'm holding my pencil a little bit farther back so I'm not getting so tight with what I'm doing. And then to do the little caps, I would just be doing little leaf marks that are in here that are coming out just to give it a little loose feeling like that. We'll be popping in some real leaves here or a bigger leaf in there once we get these big pieces drawn. So let's come over here. I'm feeling like I want to do this one next and then this one, and then we'll do that partial one there. So let's come up and do this one. So this one's going to be, the circle is going to be more at the top here of my bigger circle. So I'm going to be able to put that in there. So let's start with that shamrock look. Now this one's going to come up, that pie piece that we're talking about. This one I had a little bit more open space here. Right between here, the negative space was a little bit more open just to change it just a tiny bit and up, but it's still going to be that gathering of 3 is what I'm looking for. Okay, now we have to make the ones that are tucked behind it. So these are the ones that are going to be shorter. They're going to be tucked in behind that one. So they don't want to be all the same shape. Okay, plus we're going to change the color. That will help as well to really give a lot of definition. Now let's pop down here. This one's going to have the shamrock look too. I'm going to move my circle up towards this end of my big circle. So we're going to start with a pie piece that's coming this direction. And actually, once you get comfortable drawing this shape, the faster you do it, the better quality of loose flower you're going to get. Now let's do the ones that are behind it, that are tucked in behind. They're going to be a little smaller. Okay, so there that one is. Now let's work on this one. This is that bigger kind of like going at an angle look. So if we look at my pencil one here, you can see where I did kind of the sideways look of the shamrock here, where those 3 would be the same. And these 2 are the ones that are going to be a different color than whatever this group of 3 set would be. So I'm going to look here. I'm going to do I'm going to swoop this back like that and connect it there. Now I'm going to go ahead and put my first pie piece here, kind of a sideways pie. Kind of a sideways pie. There we go. Now I'm going to follow this line up, come over, and then back down because it's still going to be a pie piece there. And then whatever might fit here. Okay, so there we have it. Now it's also going to have a little bit of that green bitsies that we're going to see because we would be seeing underneath those petals because it's faced sideways. So we'd see a little bit there. Now we have to create something in that back. So we'd be seeing some of the 2 that are behind it. I started mine about right in here. So they're going to be a different size and come right back in there. So let's go ahead and put some of those in there. Again, this is just very loose. Okay, great. I think I like it. Looks great. All right, we have a couple little more buds. These are just very informal. There's nothing really too exact about it. If you think about it, it's kind of like little squiggly bits of maybe making, what's a shape for this? I'm not even for sure what we should call this. Just a little up and down, up and down. I put in a little extra detail by adding 2 different colors. So I have 2 little buds at the top of my circle. So let's add those in. I'm going to come around. I'm probably going to make them go down into my circle this time. This one here, I'll probably have it come down in my circle as well. And I'm going to do that little U shape just with some little wiggly bits, kind of like a little fingers, something like that. Let's come up here and we'll do the same thing. Just a fun way to go ahead and end off the drawing by adding a smaller something in there. Let's take a look at our leaves. They're rather like hearts. So if they've got a little bit of a softer point, so they're not like exactly pointed, a little bit softer point, but then it's going to come up and then back down and over. If you kick it, maybe this one will be easier to see, where it's coming up, coming down, and then coming around. When you're doing this, it just looks good is to have some larger ones, some medium-sized ones, and some small ones. The rest of the ones that I'm adding in the background, those are just washes of color, and we don't have to draw every single leaf in. So just choose a few spots, like I drew right here, 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 and there. And that's all the real formal ones that I got done. Hi, my sweet friend Jeannie. Thanks for popping in tonight. So I'm going to do one here. So I'm going to start with that heart shape coming up. Again, I'm holding that pencil farther back so I'm not getting caught up into being too exact. And I'm just going to pop them in where they might feel good. This one I'm going to do just a partial leaf, like maybe a side, kind of a side thing maybe. This one I'll do a little bit smaller one. So again, I'm going for that heart shape, but not really. And we can pop them in whichever direction it might fill into your space. What looks nice is if you can change the direction so they're not all going the same way. So if you can kind of slightly stagger up the directions they're going in, that's just going to add a lot more interest to your drawing. I'm going to put one here too, like that. There we go. And maybe one here. Again, trying to hold my pencil a little bit farther back so I'm not so tight. Want to loosen that space up in drawing ability, making it real loose. Okay, that's it for drawing. If you want to pop in some letters, now I was saying that I think this would make a beautiful card, or even a little framed piece would be good. This was the birthday flower for the month of February. Did you know that there's a whole schedule of flowers for the months for the birthdays? And February is for pansies. So I thought, well, we still have one last day. This is the last day, so we're going to sneak in a pansy. You know, I'm not even for sure what next month is, but I think I'll add next month's birthday flower into the schedule of drawing. And I'm just going to hand do this. So I'm just going to take a look here to see how much space I have. And when I do the hand lettering, what I think helps make it look good is if you kind of change it up as far as having some uppercase, some lowercase, your eye is just going to read it that it looks good. So I'm just freehanding it. And hopefully I have it spelled right, Carrie. My friend Carrie is watching. She's been watching me draw for many years, and she knows that I can misspell the most simplest words and not even see that I misspelled it. So anytime she's on, I'm always like, I have to have a spell checker. Now this drawing is probably a perfect one for a combination of different erasers. So I'm going to kind of just lighten up that darker line that's there. That's all the way around. And then I'm just going to jump right to my kneaded eraser. And I'm going to go over my graphite lines with this kneaded eraser. And that's just going to lighten all of this up. Now, I did not do a lot of pen work on this tonight. This is a quick and simple drawing. That's why I think it would be a delightful drawing, painting to do for a card. A thank you card, a get well card, I don't know, hello friend card, whatever it might be. Maybe a birthday card. If you have a friend, if you have friends who have birthdays in February, make one now so you can tuck it away and give it to them later. Great idea to share the flowers. Yes, yes. So I'm thinking it'll be a fun project. So we'll do whatever birthday flower it might be that month. We'll make sure we get that flower drawn in that month. Okay. Oh, I'm thinking that'll probably be okay. This color is pretty dark. Tonight I'm just going to be using the Paul Rubin colors. They're kind of a middle priced range color. They're more like, I guess supposed to be more like a, I'm going to say it wrong. Forget which color, which watercolor, professional watercolor grade. I can't even say it. It's a mid-price color, a mid-price point of watercolor. These ones do come in they already do come in the boxes of the paint, so they already come in there, so they're not in tubes, but I do believe you can buy Paul Rubens in tubes. So if you do wear or you use one, you can replace it, which is always nice because the other little student grade watercolor that I normally use, you can't really replace them because they don't come in tubes, but this one you could. But anyway, no matter what color you use, even if you're using markers, even Crayola, whatever you might be using, you're still going to want to do yourself a color card just to be able to see what your colors look like on paper versus inside the pan. This one too, another thing to point out is if you're going to do this type of watercolor, a good pointer is these things pop out. And I've had them pop out a couple different times now. So you're going to want to take, you're going to want to unwrap them because they come wrapped. Unwrap them, but save the papers that they're wrapped in so that you can, if you want to reorder it, you know what color you need to reorder and what number. And then you're going to want to write the names on the bottom or on the side because you may not know which ones pop out and which ones they are, so that when they do pop out, you can push them back in here. Go ahead and clip them in. And I've had that done a few times now, and I've had more than one pop out before at a time. And I'm not really necessarily all that familiar, especially when you get down into these blue colors where you have a lot of blues that look the same. I don't know which ones are which. So that's just a helpful tip is when you get paint that comes like that, what to kind of label it. Keep the little papers so you might have an idea of what you might want to reorder. Now we're going to be doing watercolor tonight, but you most certainly could do this in acrylic paint. That would look great. Jeannie's watching tonight, and she is a acrylic painter. Carrie says March birthday is daffodils. That makes perfect sense. Daffodils. I know some of the gals who live in the South are saying their daffodils are already blooming already. I'm going to be using kind of two different shades of purple, so I'm just going to pull these up here. This is that darker violety purple. This one's called Violet. And then I'm going to pop over and choose the next one over. It's kind of more of a reddish purple. And that one is called Madder Red. So those are the colors I'm going to kind of mix together and make my own. And for my green tonight, I'm going to be using this color. I really like this one. It's called Hooker Green. And when you start using watercolors in different grades of watercolors, there's going to be some that you'll notice that have kind of a little bit of a grainy texture to it. This particular one from this particular paint set does have a tiny bit of grainy look to it, but I like that color. And then I'm going to be mixing a little bit of Payne's gray into that green as well to kind of come up with that bluish, that Payne's gray color inside of there, which is a very pretty blue is what it is. Okay, so let's set that up. So I'm going to look for my Payne's gray, which is over here. On this side, it's a lovely shade of blue. I'm going to have that set up. Now these are going to be mixed to tea consistency because when you do watercolor, you always start light and then work your way dark. So those are just mixed to tea, which means that there's more water than there is pigment in there. So I can get a lighter version of my color right away. So when I was talking earlier about developing the pansies, the one look you want to do is the shamrock grouping that you made, and I've been kind of referring to that as the shamrock grouping. Those three petals will be the same. The other ones on the bottom will be slightly color shifted, or even they can be even more color shifted. I'm sure you've seen pansies that are purple, but then these under ones maybe white with just a little bit of streaks of purple in them. Otherwise, these could be yellow ones as well, bright golden yellows, and maybe these are off-white behind there. So the key to it is just when you're setting your colors up, the shamrock ones, let's just call them shamrock ones, Those three are the same, and then the two back ones will be the color shift. So choose what colors you would like to use, and I'm going to do that purple. I like just the standard old pansy look. Is there anybody who's watching tonight? Do you have pansies in your yard, or do you grow pansies? Pansies is one of the it's a very hardy flower. It's one of the ones that we can grow here in my neck of the woods in Minnesota in kind of very cold weather. So they're some of the first ones that get planted. They're not a perennial, though they don't come back all the time. We have to replant them every year. But I think they're just a beautiful little happy flower to be able to have. Now, when you're putting your purple in, especially in this dark area, with watercolor, it's okay to have some of your base color paper showing because that's going to be your brightest whites. And actually, it's very preferable. If you can leave some whites showing, doesn't mean that you might not ever color them in. It just means you have the opportunity to have a really bright white highlight in your picture. So leave some open spaces if you can, because that might be where you want to put some of your light colors. Whoa, I just splattered my paper there, added a little extra texture before I was ready, I guess. Now, okay, so here's my triad of that underneath one. And we're going to do some color wash kind of look at this first, if you let your paper dry, the terminology that they use it is glazing. So put this color on, I let this color dry somewhat, and then I can glaze another color over top is one way you can put a watercolor on. The other way is called wet on wet. So I would put this purple on. It would still be wet, and I could tap in another wet color on top of it, and that would be considered a wet on wet blend. And then your paints are going to act completely different. They're going to meld together, create their own patterns and their own colors by blending naturally on your paper. But I'm going to let mine dry a little bit before I go in. So here's my other triad here. Right on in. Up. Now these little round brushes work perfect for this size of painting, and like I said, they'll last you a long time. The watercolor rinses out of your brushes fairly easy, so there's not a ton of brush maintenance, which is nice. You plant them in September, and then they're beautiful all winter, and then they die on life. It's interesting, Jeannie, how that works. Oh, fun. That would be a beautiful color to have them out there all winter long. I'm going to put this little bit of this light. I'm only going to see just this purple and probably not the other purple in there. Let's take a little bit more. Ran out of color. Add some in here. This is my triad at the top. Now watercolor is going to dry slightly lighter, so what I'm seeing with my color while it's wet is going to be different when it dries. So it's in this particular palette or this paint, I find that this purple becomes very kind of almost dull when I did it. So I was rather surprised at how many layers I actually had to do to get more of a vibrant look of purple. Now I'm going to come in, now this time with my purple, I'm going to start adding less water, more pigment. So I'm going to have a little different look. Now I'm going to come back in and layer on my next bit of color. So this time I'm going to center. I'm not going to try to cover up everything I have on. It's a good time to decide, you know, where is your highlights or your sun coming from? Is it coming from this way? Then maybe you want to put your highlights where it would make sense that if your sun is shining a certain direction, where your highlights would be and where your lowlights would be. So I'm going to pop this in. Now it's really kind of coming to life, but I still want to leave some of my brightest whites. Now when you lay your color down, if you have a big puddle, which I kind of have a puddle going on there, you can maybe kind of see it's a puddle, what I can do is rinse my brush out, take it in my paper towel, give it a squeeze, and then I can come in and I can tap and push my color around. When you do it this way, it's kind of called a thirsty brush because it'll pick up and it'll push your color around, which is helpful. So if you get too much water, you will start noticing that it starts to get these like, there's a name, bloom. It's called bloom. So water flowers to bloom, but you may not want that look when you're doing your watercolor. It starts to get a real dark edge around, and maybe the center might be lighter, but around that water is going to be darker because that's where your pigment is pooling. That's from having a lot of water on your color when you're laying it down. So if you don't want those blooms, you just want to control your water just a little bit more so you can pick up some of your pigment in your water and control a little bit of that look. Now, blooms are really beautiful in some circumstances, and you may want them in yours, and you're fine with them. But if you're getting them and you're not knowing why, that's why. It has to do with how much water is on your paper and with your color and how it's getting the color to separate. One year I bought fake flowers and stuck them in the flower bed. Well, Carrie, that's a good trick. You were able to trick a few people and yourself too, right? Well, you know, I don't blame you for doing that. Well, you both live in very warm climates, and you probably have tons more opportunity to have flowers all year round than I do here in Minnesota. We just don't have that same thing. So when we finally start getting some spring flowers, it's just so glorious and wonderful. Way we kind of fake it out is that we put out, that's why a lot of us leave our Christmas lights out longer in our neck of the woods versus in other parts. And I still have my Christmas lights out. It's February, the end of February, last day of February. I still have my Christmas lights out. I just put out white ones. But there's just something that brings me happiness and joy when I pull into my driveway at night and have those little white lights out. So I'm going to call my little Christmas lights in February my little bits of spring flowers because we're just not going to get them for quite a while. So we're going to put this right here. Although this year, 2023 winter has been a very unusual winter. We've had very mild temperatures. It's not even close to what we normally get for our winters. So this year has been very, very different, and we can't complain about that. Now I'm going to pick up I remember I got that. It was called the Madder Red. I'm going to put that over here. I might start with a bright layer of that, but then I could also layer over top a little bit of that purple. You love the lights outside? I do. It just makes me feel happy. I'm going to come in here and layer in. Now I'm going to change this color down here because these petals will be different. Now, Jeannie, your pansies that you paint, do you just use the regular pansies, like the purple ones, or do you go in for like the special hybrid color ones? Because I do know they come in beautiful ones. Even like they have purple and then they might have that bright yellow. That's the back ones look so pretty too. So many different colors. You know, I said they're not a perennial flower where we live, but you know, Kendra, my gal, I'm a PCA during the day, and her parents plant poppies, and there have been some self-seeding ones that do come back just as a little surprise, and I'm always amazed at how hardy the little pansy is as a flower. It's a mighty little hardy flower. Okay, so I'm starting to get that look of the two different colors, and I'm just being kind of loose with my strokes. I wanted this to be more of a loose looking and not so formal. Now the part that I do have, I do get myself into a little bit of trouble. I do end up covering up my centers often, where that goldenness would be for the center of my flower. I kind of get those covered up. When we visited Minnesota, there were beautiful wildflowers that they were purple. Oh, yes, depending on where you were. Well, there's this flower, it's called the purple, what's it called? And actually they brought them in, that's not native to our state. And they brought it in for some reason, and then it ended up being like almost a noxious weed where it's taken over some of our swamp areas, and it's actually illegal to like plant it or whatever, and they don't really want it anymore because it's been very hazardous to our swamp areas and has taken over a lot of the natural grasses that have grown in there. But yes, I do agree. It's a beautiful flower, and it's very pretty, but it's not supposed to be here. It's kind of like the kudzu in your area, right? Oh, you were in Duluth. Yeah, it's kind of like the kudzu in your area, and you know, I think we don't have it exactly like the northern states do, but when we lived like in Texas and different areas, how that was brought in for like protection of the railroads at the time, where they planted that to help with something, and then that kind of took over. That purple flower is that kind of the same. And I think it's called purple. No, I'm not going to remember. But yes, but it is a very pretty flower, and it looks gorgeous out there. And who would have thought it would have been such a problem? All right, so I have my purples laid in. Now I'm going to go back to that blue purple though, and I'm going to even want to put in, now I'm going to make this more of a melt consistency, which means more pigment, less water. I'm going to give this a tap on my paper towel, definitely, because I probably have a lot of concentration of the color here. And I'm going to come in and just do some little like feathering motions here. Now my paper is pretty dry, but I'm going to come in and do a little bit of that feathering motion. Now if it gets too exact, you can always rinse your brush off. Damp brush this time. And then you can touch and add a little bit of water to that to soften that little bit of look. Like if it's too strong of a feathered look and you still want to soften that up a little bit, you could soften that color up. And I might do that to this here first. I'm going to add some clear water, a little bit of just like water on before I add my darker color in. Now I'll come in and tap that darker color here and let that float up. And that's going to want to follow wherever my water is, because that's how watercolor works. It always wants to follow where the paper is wet and where the water is. So I'm just going to tap a little bit in there, darken that center up just a little bit more. So take your time, work a little bit on these, push it a little bit, see what you can get. Try seeing how your colors react, how with the water, with the color, and experiment with how your color is moving around on your paper. Okay, so this is a good opportunity to test your watercolors, see how they work, play a little bit with them. It's a quick little drawing, so it doesn't take long to do one. And then you can play a little bit and find out how your colors work and how your colors blend. Okay, so that one's coming in there, being a nice darker color. And I can even tell I want to maybe even add a little bit more of that reddish color into there too. You have wisteria. It's beautiful for a week or two, and then it's it's very invasive. You know, I've heard that too. And I always think wisteria looks beautiful on photos and such, but I wondered often too, does it get like super carried away with different things? That's what some other plants too. I have, oh, what is it called? Words are hard, y'all. I can't come up with my words tonight. Cone flowers, they can be that way, where they can look really great and then they start taking over everything, and then pretty soon you have just cone flowers in your garden. But they are more of like a natural. I'm going to darken this up a little bit. Now this would be fun too if you wanted to tap a tiny bit of this color in here on the side while the colors are all wet, and I'll show you what that kind of looks like. So I've tapped in that color. Well, it's probably not going to show. It looks pretty dark. It's going to dry a lot lighter, but you could actually travel some of your other color into your other area and see what that looks like and see how those colors mix and play together. Because they're both purples, you know, that purplish color, they're not going to create mud. So they're going to be really pretty together as they blend. I think I might even want to add a little bit more water up here just to blend my color out even a little bit more. Oh, this is just fun. This is just playtime, adding, seeing how my watercolor is working together. And these are very loosely painted flowers. I'm not going to win any prizes at the fair for exact replication in the botanical books of pansies. But they're just a loose flower and fun to paint. I love that loose quality of adding the colors on, pushing and pulling, and just seeing how my watercolor moves around. Often the faster you move, the more squiggles you make. Leave some open space though. The better look you're going to get and the more playful your painting is going to be. I'm going to come down here and pick up a little bit more of this darker color here, lay it in, see where I go, maybe even tap some of it in on this side because my colors are wet. See how it all plays together. Ooh, I'm loving it. I'm going to hold this up a little bit. Maybe it'll show you a little bit. how you can see how that color is just kind of playing together. All right, let's let a little bit of that dry. We'll give that a time to dry, see where we are. I'm gonna go ahead, but I do want to add a little bit of water, just clear water here. Maybe just a little bit of clear. I can't stop futzing with my, just to loosen it up just a little bit is what I'm looking for, to not have harsh lines. So that's what I'm kind of trying to do by pushing and pulling with clean water, is to soften my lines up so I don't have such hard lines and have that very washy watercolor look. Okay. All right, Melanie, stop. Don't do any more. Okay, so let's mix a little bit of that green. So I'm going to pick up some of that Hooker's green right here and choose that color. And I'm going to make sure I get the right one, because the one over is a little bit more blue-green, and I don't really want that one. Okay, so I'm going to start out really light with this one too, and then build on. I don't want the leaves to be the primary show, the stars of the show. Oh, and I forgot to do those little buds. I'll have to pop some color in there. So I'm just going to go loose with this color, and I'm just going to pop in some of that green. And you don't even have to necessarily follow your shapes exactly of how you drew them. I'm just being real loose with my color. This has got a little bit of that. Remember how we added a little bit of the green underneath? Let's pop in a little bit there too. And again, often with this style of painting, if you move quicker and don't be, labor so much on the shapes, you're just going to end up with a better look, a more loose type of a look. This is still the 6 brush, so I haven't really bumped up on my sizes at all. Okay, let's leave it there. Let's go ahead and I better put in a little bit of these little, I forgot to add these little buds up here, just a little bit of smidgen of color, and they can be kind of basically any size you want. All right, let's pick up a little bit of that Payne's gray. So that's that bluish gray over here. I'm going to mix a little bit with that with my green. I'm going to make kind of a grayish green up here. Okay, and then I'm going to tap that in a little bit here and there on my bigger leaves, just to add a little bit more interest. And then I'm going to start washing in some background color. Oop, that's really pretty. That right there is a little happy accident. Some of my red kind of just flowed down into my green. Love that look. That is so pretty. All right, let's pick up some lighter washes. So I'm going to take my blue. I'm going to water that down fairly well. So it's pretty light. It's even less than tea. It's got very little pigment in there. This is where I'm going to come in, and I'm going to start adding some splashes of color into my back area. I'm going to be washing some color in. Now, if you want to switch up to a bigger size brush, and you have one, you could. So I'm just layering in some color as I come around my circle area, and I'm adding that color. I'm getting some finger marks from my purple, which I didn't mean to get. You can scrub that out if that happens. You can always scrub it out with some clean water, and then hitting it with your paper towel if you need to, and see if you can't pick some of it up. That will help sometimes. I'm getting a little messy with my. So I'm just bringing in, I'm still going to try to keep my idea of my circle, so not covering it in too much. Okay, so there's a little bit of that color there. I'm going to pick up some of that green again. I'm going to add a little bit of that blue, but I'm going to really water it down. So I want a very light wash color. And then I'm going to layer some of that in my background. And what that's going to do is like, oh, there's more leaves there, but there's really not like more leaf shapes. So I'm kind of just keeping my background without adding a whole lot more in there. Okay, pretty. Now let's pick up, choose one of the purples. It could be, you could mix them actually if you're doing purple. Mix them together, but again, do a really light wash of that color. And then let's tap in a little bit of that stuff here. So now these colors, because they're all wet, they're going to kind of just melt together and create their own little look. Okay, beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Now I'm going to have to dry this a little bit in order to do that center part where the letters are, because I'm just going to be doing a hand lettering of with my paint is what I'm going to do. But if you have a marker, which I could do that on this one too, but I liked the look of having that dark lettering in the middle. I kind of like that look. So I'm going to see if I can't duplicate that again. Dry that off a little bit. Now that darker lettering I did with my Payne's Gray, and that I'm just gonna pick that up from my set. I'm just gonna go right in here. I don't have a lot of water on my brush. I'm just making a little puddle, and I'm gonna give it a twist. Now, if you have a smaller brush, you could do a smaller brush. This isn't a water brush, but I could use this one if I wanted to. As a matter of fact, I could try that and see if that works. So you don't feel like you have to use a watercolor brush. You can use whatever you might have that might work. Okay, so I'm not going to have a lot of water on there. And it's just making a little puddle in there. I'm going to give that a tap so I have a little bit more control over what I'm going to do. Hi, Kendra. Thanks for coming on tonight. All right, let's go ahead and I'm going to go light with my pressure and follow around. Oop, this has kind of got a bad brush on it. It doesn't got a great tip. It kind of split the hairs on it. It wasn't the best brush to choose, I guess. Okay, let's try a different brush. That one's really kind of a bad brush. But it would be, you could do it in markers too. If you had a marker, you could do it in a marker. That would work great. I know some of you ladies like to use gel pens. Gel pens would look good. Or if you have a script liner and you know how to do that type of writing, that would be good too. That brush I was using, the tip just was not sticking together. The hairs on the end were just kind of splaying out, so it didn't want to stay put. But a marker would be good for this too. This will probably turn more blue as it dries because it's going to go lighter. Okay. Got a little fatter than what I wanted, but that's okay. That's okay. I'm going to add, see if I can't add just the tiniest bit of goldenish yellow. So I'm going to pick up some goldenish yellow, yellowish gold that's kind of sitting here in my box. And I'm going to pop that into my centers here just to give a bright little center to my pansies. If I had enough layer, like I said, I get a little carried away and then sometimes I forget to leave enough space for those centers, but I'm going to add that in there. Now with my other one, I did pop in a little bit of gold pen, which I thought looked nice too. So if you have a bright gold pen, you could add a little bit of accent, and maybe that'll show up here. The metallic gold in the centers, the little 3 dots. I thought that looked nice, looked great. You could do a little bit of splitter splattering here as well. You could take a little bit of your purple, water it down. I'm going to take that blue purple, water it down on my brush. I'm switched up to a 10, so I have a nice little fat brush. And then I could come in and just do a few bit of splitters. Just to add a little bit of interest. Yes, the lettering didn't turn out as well as I wanted on this one, but it'll still do. And there it is for tonight. And again, if you wanted to add, oh, I do, a deco color one. So does anybody have a favorite metallic marker? I like this one. I just wish the tip was a little bit tinier, smaller, compact. Okay, there we go. That is great. I think that looks good. I think it looks good. I think it looks good. Well, that is it, my lovely creative friends. Thank you for hopping on. For those who are watching on YouTube, I almost said the wrong one. If you haven't subscribed to my channel, I would love for you to subscribe to my channel. I go live every Tuesdays and Thursdays, so you're welcome to come on. There's always the option for the replay as well, so the replays will be up on YouTube always. I'm not for sure they're always going to be up available on Facebook though, but they'll always be available on YouTube, so you can find them there. So if you haven't subscribed to my channel, I'd love for you to do that. Leave me a comment if you want to. Facebook always loves a thumbs up. Not Facebook. YouTube always loves a thumbs up. So if you wouldn't mind hitting that thumbs up bell, subscribing if you haven't, come back and see me again. There's a playlist of all a bunch of different things for spring drawings that have been up there. So please take a look and see what you have. You're welcome, Carrie. Thank you so much for coming in and keeping me company tonight. It's always, I so appreciate my longtime watchers, all my watchers. It's delightful to see your names pop up. So thank you. And thank you for sharing your art. Those who do one, if you want to come over to my Facebook page, you can post yours. And I love sharing your things because it doesn't have to look good to be like mine to be good. It can look many different ways. And I love sharing your ideas and what you do. It was so fun to see your carrot earrings on your bunny that you did, Carrie. Super, super fun. And Gloria shared hers too. Super, super cute. She put a little dove in the pocket of the bunny. So many creative ideas. So many. It's a great, fun, creative community group that we have here. So thanks everyone for stopping in. You have a great evening, and I definitely will see you next Tuesday. Bye now.